Imagine driving home at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. You're inside a state-of-the-art tunnel, a miracle of modern engineering that cost the taxpayers $24 billion. You feel safe. You shouldn't. Suddenly, 12 tons of concrete, the size of a school bus, detach from the ceiling. There is no warning, no time to brake, just a crushing silence. This happened in Boston, and it wasn't an accident. It was the inevitable result of a decades-long heist involving the mob, corrupt politicians, and corporations that traded human lives for profit margins. I'm Antoni, and today, we're digging into the Big Dig, the most expensive, most corrupt, and most dangerous construction project in American history. If you think your city's infrastructure is safe, you're about to change your mind. In the 1980s, Boston was a nightmare. An elevated highway called the Central Artery cut through the city like a rusty scar. It was built for 75,000 cars, but was carrying 200,000. It was a parking lot with a view. The plan was simple on paper. Move the whole highway underground. Create parks on top. Fix the traffic. They called it the Big Dig. The original price tag was $2.8 billion. A lot of money, sure, but manageable. But here's the thing about huge piles of government cash. They attract sharks. Before the first shovel hit the ground, the estimates started to leak. The budget didn't just grow, it mutated. By the time they were done, that $2.8 billion had ballooned to over $14 billion in cash and $24 billion with interest. Where did the money go? It didn't just vanish. It was redirected into the pockets of consultants, contractors, and silent partners who knew exactly how to keep the meter running. Building a tunnel under a 300-year-old city is like performing heart surgery on a patient while they're running a marathon. You have skyscrapers, subway lines, and old pipes that aren't on any map. But the real enemy wasn't the dirt. It was the water. Boston is built on soft clay and fill. The tunnels were constantly leaking. But instead of fixing the structural integrity, the contractors did what they do best. They covered it up. Leaked internal memos showed that thousands of leaks were identified during construction. Thousands. Some were so bad that workers joked they should bring fishing poles to work. Instead of high-grade waterproof seals, they used cheap alternatives. Why? Because every dollar saved on materials was a dollar earned in bonuses. And then there was the concrete. Thousands of loads of substandard concrete were poured into the walls. They knew it wouldn't last. They knew the salt water would eventually eat through the steel reinforcements. They just didn't care. They figured they'd be long gone before the first wall collapsed. July 10th, 2006. Milena Del Valle and her husband were driving through the Fort Point Channel Tunnel. They were heading to the airport. They were just people, living their lives. At 9:12 p.m., the ceiling gave up. 3 tons of concrete slabs fell directly onto their car. Milena died instantly. Her husband crawled out of the wreckage, staring at a mountain of concrete where his wife used to be. The investigation that followed pulled the mask off the Big Dig. They found that the epoxy bolts, the things literally holding the ceiling over people's heads, were failing, and they had been failing for years. The company that supplied the epoxy knew it was subject to creep, meaning it would slowly pull out under weight. They sold it anyway. The engineers knew it was happening during the pull tests. They ignored it anyway. It wasn't a failure of engineering. It was a failure of conscience. So, who went to jail? In America, when you steal $100, you go to prison. When you steal 100 million and people die, you go to a settlement meeting. The companies involved paid hundreds of millions in fines. To you and me, that sounds like a lot. To them, it was just the cost of doing business. A tax on their massive profits. The Big Dig was finally finished in 2007, 9 years behind schedule. Today, it still leaks. It still requires hundreds of millions in maintenance every year just to keep it from falling apart. The taxpayers of Massachusetts will be paying off the debt until 2038. The people who designed the scheme are retired on yachts. The politicians who signed the checks moved on to higher offices. And the people of Boston, they just keep driving through those tunnels, looking up at the ceiling, wondering if today is the day the epoxy gives way again. The Big Dig isn't an isolated case. It's a blueprint. It shows exactly how the system works when greed outweighs safety. They build it fast, they build it cheap, and they charge you 10 times the price. Next time you see a massive infrastructure project in your city, don't look at the shiny renderings. Look at who's getting the contracts. Look at who's cutting the corners. Because as we learned in Boston, the most expensive things in the world are the ones they try to build on the cheap. I'm Antoni. The truth is always buried. You just have to know where to dig. Stay sharp. Stay skeptical. I'll see you in the next investigation. Every brick laid in that tunnel was a lie paid for by someone who thought they could get away with it. And for the most part, they did. But as long as the water keeps seeping through those walls, the evidence remains. You can't bury $24 billion of corruption forever. Eventually, the weight of the truth becomes too heavy for the ceiling to hold. They thought they could bribe their way out of physics. They thought political connections could replace structural integrity. They were wrong. The Big Dig stands as a warning to every city in the world. When the people in charge stop being public servants and start being business partners with the contractors, the citizens pay the price, sometimes with their taxes and sometimes with their lives. The tragedy in 2006 wasn't the end of the story. It was just the moment the world finally saw what happens when you build a dream on a foundation of greed. Those tunnels are more than just a shortcut under the city. They are a monument to the silent pact between the powerful and the wealthy. As you drive through, remember that the lights flickering above you were installed by the same people who chose the cheap epoxy. The same people who ignored the warnings. The same people who are already planning the next big project in another city, maybe yours. Corruption doesn't have a signature, but it has a smell. It smells like damp concrete and salt air in a place where it should be dry. It smells like a $24 billion hole that never seems to be filled. Keep your eyes on the road, but never stop looking at the cracks. The story of the Big Dig is the story of modern America. A massive achievement built on a massive deception. And as long as we keep quiet, they'll keep digging. They'll keep spending. And we'll keep driving through their death traps, hoping the bolts hold for just one more day. The silence in those tunnels is the most expensive thing you'll ever hear. Listen closely. It's the sound of a system that forgot who it was supposed to serve. It's the sound of $24 billion worth of secrets. And I won't stop digging until every last one of them is exposed. Keep your windows up and your guard even higher. The truth is out there, somewhere under the mud of Boston.